Okay, so I wanted to do a quick discussion on existentialism because this is a particular philosophy that comes up and influences a lot of the texts that are studied. And just wanted to give a bit of an explanation because when you actually look it up, it's very technical and I find a little bit hard to actually follow and apply to particular texts. And I started doing this just because I was reviewing some work on T.S. Eliot, but there are a lot of writers such as Virginia Woolf and many writers that wrote during the beginning of the 20th century that you can see are influenced by this particular philosophy. And it's also really relevant to even a lot of Shakespeare's texts, actually. Hamlet's probably the most famous one. And so we can kind of see how the philosophies of existentialism are relevant throughout time, even though the term wasn't technically coined until the 1960s. So just to give you an idea, so prior to the 20th century, there was in the West anyway, there's a very strong belief in religion. Christianity was, very prevalent. And there was this idea that, you had your faith and there was this direction in terms of what you should be doing in your life, how you should be living your life. And the purpose was, be a good person, follow those dictates of Christianity and Christian values, and then you'll end up being able to go to heaven or hell. Well, ideally heaven. But obviously, if you didn't do those things, you were going to hell. So there was this sense of real clarity that, how you live. And if you follow these particular guidelines, there's this sense of clarity and confidence that you knew what was going to be happening going forward. So what then happened at the end of the 19th century was people started questioning religion a lot more. So this happened for a couple of reasons. A big one was that move towards the industrial era and the age of enlightenment. So people were doing a lot of scientific discoveries. Darwin was a highly controversial figure at the time. He came out with his theory about natural selection because it directly contradicted religious values or ideas where it was said that, God created man, but then Darwin's kind of be like, no, actually we evolved from monkeys, had nothing to do, he doesn't say it had nothing to do with God, but, clearly what he's saying contradicts the Bible. So a lot of people didn't like that, but then these scientific discoveries and that progress started taking over and started building a lot of momentum. Then you had the World War I, which was really crucial in actually unfortunately just having people be really disparaged about the presence of God and if there was a God, why would all this suffering be happening? So people just really started to lose that faith. And as a result, they lost that clear purpose and direction that they had in terms of how to live now and where we were going, because if there's no religion and we don't believe in God, then when you die, where are you going? Oh, nowhere. We're just going to be, decomposed in the ground. So that sort of led to kind of feelings of despair and about life's futility and a sense of kind of hopelessness. And it was quite almost it was a very bleak sort of experience of that, especially at the beginning of the 20th century. And it's something that still goes on today, but in the postmodern look at existentialism, there's almost a bit of humor that's brought to it. So it's kind of oh, well, there's no point to anything, so let's just enjoy the now. So those kinds of ideas, you hear that all the time, you only live once and all that kind of thing, which is that's a very existential saying now that I think of it, because, from a religious standpoint, you don't only live once, you have an eternal life, or maybe even reborn if you're thinking about other religions that believe in reincarnation. So, there's a lot of existential thoughts that are now embedded into our culture. And but yeah, when it first started and was really prominent, it was very despairing kind of experience for people. And you do see this a lot in the modernist writers. T.S. Eliot's a really good example of that. So if you're analysing his poetry, you can really get a sense of the kind of existential philosophies. And so just to kind of clarify that, existentialism is the philosophy on existence and the nature and purpose of life. And it looks a lot at the nature of being. Anyway, I don't want to get too technical into it. The main thing to kind of keep in mind is that it led to these feelings of despair, hopelessness, insignificance, you know, and yeah, like a loss of kind of human worth and value. If that makes sense.